Namaste, welcome. Thank you all for joining us. Yes, Susanna, it is a lovely day and a wonderful day to give ourselves a gift. We often speak about giving ourselves gifts. So it's a wonderful day to give ourselves the gift of about a half an hour or 20 minutes, however much time you have to spend with us. But to give ourselves and to give one another this gift of precious time, intentionality, and hitting the pause button. So just take another moment or two to settle into your seat, find that comfortable seat, that sukhasana that we often speak about. You're welcome to keep your cameras on or off as you feel comfortable, but we want to remind everyone to just make sure that you are muted so that we can minimize the distractions. So let's just take a moment to make sure that we're muted. We have some folks joining us. So again, finding that comfortable seat, that comfortable posture. We may need to readjust a little bit. If we're sitting in a chair, it's helpful sometimes to just ground our feet or our shoes a little bit more purposefully to the floor beneath us. Keep that spine erect. To make contact between the base of the seat and our sit bones. But the overriding principle, of course, is to be comfortable. To make whatever adjustments we need to be comfortable. And if we haven't already done so, an invitation here to close the eyes or to soften the gaze if that feels more comfortable to us. We'll begin our meditation in just a few moments. I will ring the bell, signaling the start of our meditation. And to begin, we'll take 3 deep breaths together. And if you'd like to follow along, the pace or the count that we often use is we'll breathe in for about 4 beats, 4 counts. We will hold the breath for about 4 counts. And then we'll release the breath for slightly longer, perhaps about 6 counts. If that feels accessible to you, you're welcome to follow that pace along for our first 3 deep breaths together. If something else works for you, feel free to use that instead. We'll do that, and then we will go from there into our guided meditation. So we'll begin. Taking a deep breath in. Hold. And out. Again, in. Hold. And release. One final breath in. Holding. And out. Continuing to breathe slowly and deeply with intention and purpose. We can continue to follow the same rhythm or pace if that feels natural to us, or we can simply allow the breath to return to or find whatever pace, whatever rhythm is right for it in this moment. Here, there's no need to manipulate the breath in any way. We may not even find it helpful to count anymore, but simply allowing the breath to find its own way. When we allow the breath to find its own pace, it's really remarkable. Almost invariably, the breath very naturally, very organically, in a way that feels very comfortable to us, slows itself down. It's very rare that when we just allow the breath to find its rhythm, it's very rare for that breath to be quick, short breaths. And that should tell us something, right? That should remind us that our more natural state is, generally speaking, for the breath to be a little bit deeper, a little bit slower than perhaps what we usually carry around with us throughout our days. Once we become aware of it, it's really kind of remarkable. We become aware of how shallow our breath is during our activities, particularly times of high stress, which for many of us is frequently, if not throughout, our working days. But when we intentionally allow the breath to just settle into itself without any kind of force or agenda, lo and behold, the breath naturally slows down, becomes a little bit deeper, when the breath is settled or settling into itself. It's the perfect opportunity. It's actually a natural opportunity to simply observe it, to be aware of it. When there's something that we're not controlling, but is happening of its own accord and is following a natural pace or a natural rhythm, really the thing that makes most sense is just to observe it. If we were to stand on the shore of the ocean, if we were to go to the beach and watch the wave, the tide as it comes in and goes out, there would be practically nothing to control in that moment. There would be nothing we could control in that moment. And our relationship with the ocean, with the tide, would simply be one of observing, of being present to something that awakens our curiosity, our appreciation, perhaps, maybe even a sense of awe or amazement. In a simple way, we can try to bring ourselves to that state just by observing the tide of the breath coming in and going out. As we continue to observe the breath, be present to this simple magical act of breathing. We might find our thoughts starting to wander. It's natural. And when our thoughts, our minds start to wander, perhaps subtly or maybe even not so subtly pushing us or pulling us out of this present moment into some other space, we can acknowledge that happening and bring our thoughts, our minds, our awareness back to this breath, to this moment. When we say this breath, that's intentional. It's not breathing in general. It's not all the breaths that we've taken. It's not the breath that's coming up that we're anticipating. It's this breath. This breath. Isn't it interesting that when we set our awareness on this breath, it is impossible to hold on to it. It's impossible to carry it with us into the future or to time travel back into the past with it. By definition, it is presence. In a sense, the simple act of observing the breath is one very accessible, foundational way we can experience one of the core teachings of many meditation, mindfulness, and yoga-based practices, and that is the practice of non-attachment or letting go. When I'm present to this breath, I have to let go of the past, of the future, of any desire or craving or need to hold on or to control. The more I practice presence, the more natural letting go becomes. It's just the other side of the coin. We are newer to this practice, or perhaps even if we're not newer to the practice, but we all have our own unique psychological makeups. We have our quirks and our natures and our inclinations. And so maybe for some of us, this is really a challenging place. For some of us, we're so used to spending so much time and so much mental and emotional and even spiritual energy in the realm of the past. Or anticipating or reaching out towards, or maybe feeling anxious about the future. If this is a place of challenge for you, if this is a place of some discomfort, an invitation to just stretch ourselves a little bit more. And perhaps to embrace that discomfort, knowing that this is a safe space. This is just a few minutes in a day that will allow us many opportunities. But in these few moments, these few minutes, this tiny little slice of our day, it's safe to practice presence, to intentionally lean into that discomfort that some of us may be feeling. Perhaps to quiet that nagging, doubting voice that questions whether we are doing something right now. That tries to define us solely on the basis of productivity or action or whatever it may be in our own lives. We can bring the awareness back to this moment And if we need to, we can, with kindness, but with firmness, we can tell that voice that this is where we want to be, that this is where we need to be, that this is where we are. Continuing to anchor our awareness on this moment, on this breath. We will conclude our meditation sit with just a few minutes of intentional silence. An invitation to use that silence as a way of deepening any insight or experience that is calling to us. And if we are feeling challenged with the notion of presence, perhaps these final minutes of our sit are an especially good time to stretch ourselves a little bit, to lean into that presence. After these few minutes of silence, I will invite us again to take a deep breath in together, to hold the breath, and then to exhale, chanting or being present to the sacred sound vibration of Om, the sound of the infinite and universal, as a way of sealing our practice and any intention that we may feel inspired to set. Taking a deep breath in. Hold. Om. Inviting us to gently and with intention open the eyes or widen the gaze, bringing our awareness, our consciousness, our observation back to our external surroundings, back to the room that we're sitting in, and to our virtual room, our Zoom room. Thank you all so much for joining me in this precious little pause in our day. Sometimes this question comes up, especially for those who are a little bit newer to formal meditation practice. Question comes up of what to do about the mind's tendency to what I think some psychologists call free associating, the mind's tendency to free associate during meditation practice or really any kind of quiet, still moments. And some of us really struggle with this, I can confess. Maybe it's just a kind of factor of my kind of psycho-spiritual nature or something, but I tend to have one of these personality types where I often do find myself, free associating. I come up with different ideas, or, if I'm working on a writing project, for instance, often in quiet moments, I find my mind kind of going to planning the next thing I'm going to write or reflecting on something I've written before, something like that. And there are certain practices that do allow for that kind of free association and kind of welcome it and embrace it. But many of the, at least the teachings that I'm familiar with that draw from the particular spiritual traditions that I've studied in, they kind of consider that free association to be its own thing. There's a separate time for that. And there are ways to do that, particularly for those of us who are trying to, um, develop and grow our creativity. But meditation practice in the vein that we're exploring here really takes a little bit of a different approach and says that when the minds and the thoughts in the mind start to kind of do that free association thing, first and foremost, we should recognize it and acknowledge it, name it. That's what's happening. But again, as you often hear me saying, with kindness and gentleness, but also with a kind of a firmness and a kind of a resolute purpose, we simply bring the mind back. We bring the thoughts back. We can kind of reassure ourselves in this internal dialogue that we sometimes have. We can reassure ourselves, okay, there will be time for that later. There are natural times and spaces to reflect on the past, to plan for the future, to brainstorm, to kind of creatively free associate. But this is something different. We're trying to practice presence. And so presence ends up being a very powerful practice that doesn't deny free association, but we're doing something different here. It's a different project. So that's what I try to lean into a little bit in today's practice. So again, thank you for joining. If anyone has any questions or comments or would like to share a reflection, you're welcome to do so. You can unmute yourself and do that now. Okay. Well, Thank you again, and please do continue to join us. We meet most Tuesdays at noon on this Zoom room. So you are welcome to drop in and meditate with us Tuesday afternoons at 12 p.m. Eastern. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day and wonderful rest of your week, and looking forward to seeing you soon. Namaste.